Welcome to New Hampshire Politics with John Burt. I'm John Burt. I want to welcome you today, and we have a very special guest, and I'm very excited that, well, it's Representative Lynne Ober, and she represents Pelham and Hudson, or Hudson-Pelham. I don't know how you guys...
Either way.
Is it? Yeah. Well, I want to thank you for coming on, Lynne. And
it's a pleasure to be here, John.
And why I'm really excited for having Representative Ober, Lynne here, is she sits on the Finance Committee, and there's only a very few people I really respect on the Finance Committee. I mean, I respect them all. They're all good friends. But when Lynne gets on the House floor, or Representative Kirk, or Norm Major, when either of you guys...
Ways and Means.
Yes, or Ways and Means, yeah. When any of you guys gets up there, I mean, I really, take notice because, you guys are very accurate, and I want to hear from what you're going to say. And now, we're going to talk about the budget for this hour. The past 2 years, we had a balanced budget.
We did, John.
Yes.
We came in 2 years ago, and the government was running in the red. In fact, it was so bad in the red that during the committee of conference on our budget 2 years ago, then Governor John Lynch came before the committee in public session and asked for 5 million more budget cuts to cover the red spending.
Really?
And we reluctantly made that, but we are now on track. We have gotten our revenues through April.
Yes.
We have only 2 months of revenues to come. We are going to show a small surplus, so we should be slightly in the green. So we didn't make too many cuts, but neither are we leaving this year's Finance Committee with a large amount of red ink at the top of the budget, because New Hampshire is a balanced budget state, and if you end 1 year with red ink, you have to make budget cuts in the next year. We don't borrow money.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And now, when we did that, that was unlike the previous administration. I mean, they were running with fuzzy math, as I call it, for a couple terms.
Yes, for the previous 2 terms under Governor Lynch.
Yeah.
I did 3 budgets under Governor Lynch, and we do them once every 2 years. For the previous 2 terms, or 4 years, he had come in with red at the beginning and overspending. He had, what he would do was he had very rosy predictions for revenue, but the reality was we were in a recession. So we didn't get rosy predictions for revenue. We got less revenue, and that means you have to make cuts.
Yeah. Well, and I know they had a lot of stimulus money and other money that they were just spending like there was no tomorrow.
That was one-time money.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, the way that came out from the federal government, it had to be a new program. It had to be what they called shovel ready, i.e. ready to go. So there was no planning for it, but there was money for it for only 1 year. So if you started a new program, the following year there was no money for the staff, no money for the program. And I'm not sure that did the state a lot of good with health and human services programs, for example, because neither the state nor the feds could continue those programs into the next year. It did a lot of good for our road construction because projects that were underway, they had enough money to go ahead and witness the bridge over to the Manchester airport.
Yes. Yeah. So that was part of that money.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's why there's no toll on it, because it's federal money.
And it was federal money, and it was predicted to be finished sometime in 2014, I think, and instead it's been open quite a while. So they gave it a jump start, and that money allowed them to finish ahead of schedule.
Yeah, good. And well, that's what I was happy with, because I was a freshman in 2010 for the 2010 to 12 budget. Right. But now we're back, kind of, with the Democrat-controlled House. What is our budget this year, compared to what the Senate wants to offer?
The budget cycle is kind of interesting. I liken it to a football game with 4 quarters.
Yep.
And they aren't 15-minute quarters, so this is an analogy that sort of works. But the first quarter is the governor and all of the department heads getting together and working out the budget request. And of course, Governor Lynch, even though he announced he wasn't going to run again, started that last summer and continued it through the election. As soon as Governor Hassan was elected, outgoing Governor John Lynch had her in, and they started working together so she could see what was done.
Okay.
So that's the first quarter. By state law, that has to end on February 15th. Governor must get the budget out on February 15th. Governor Hassan was not able to do that this year, and there finally was, at the end of February, a lawsuit filed because she hadn't gotten the budget out. That then was dropped when the budget did come out.
Yeah.
Second quarter is the House. We have from February 15th till sometime towards the end of March to finish our deliberations, and we meet 6 and 7 days a week. So we work long hours on that.
Yeah, you guys do work very long hours.
We have to vote the budget out before we have the March revenues. April is the big month for revenues because that's when business taxes come in. By then, the budget's moved into quarter 3, which is in the Senate. And the Senate gets actual March revenues, which were better than expected, April revenues, which were significantly better than expected, May revenues, and then the Committee of Conference, because this is no different. Quarter 4 is the Committee of Conference. You and your wife probably don't agree how to spend every penny in your household income.
That's right.
My husband and I don't agree how to spend every penny in our household income. So it's not unexpected that the Senate and the House don't totally agree. But then also the Senate has actual revenues, so they have a good idea where we're going to be as far as red ink by the end of the year, which the House has only got a projection. And until they get those revenues, you can't tell.
Yeah.
The Committee of Conference works out the compromise on what the House wanted, what the Senate suggested, and that comes back to the full House and the full Senate at the end of June, hopefully. Because if we don't finish it by the end of June, they either have to close all the doors in government or they have to pass a continuing resolution so that government can continue at a certain level. Otherwise, I mean, just think about it. Your driver's license is up in July and there's no budget, so they've closed all the doors. You can't renew your license. I mean,
Yeah.
that's not acceptable.
Yeah.
So if they can't agree, there would be a continuing resolution.
Now, so it'd be almost like a sequester. Would that be the same thing, or would that be different?
There was a lot of press about the sequester, and
there
they were talking about a 2% budget cut spread over 10 years, a decade. And I couldn't understand why cutting such a small amount spread across 10 years caused so much press. Because it seems to me, if you or I had maybe a spouse retire or a spouse lose a job, that you wouldn't have 10 years to make those cuts, but you'd make immediate adjustments. You'd still continue with basic services.
Yes.
And 2% is certainly not cutting into major services.
No, no. Now, has New Hampshire ever gone to July, after July?
When Governor Benson was governor, they had a continuing resolution.
Oh, they did.
They did.
They couldn't meet, you know, how long did it take them?
The legislature passed the budget and the governor vetoed it.
Oh.
So then they passed a continuing resolution and worked together, the three of them, and they ended up with a budget that actually had a little more money in it than the first budget that the governor vetoed.
Oh, okay, that's what happened.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Now, where do you think this one's going to go?
It's hard to say. When Governor Hassan gave her address in February, she said she was supporting one casino
Yes.
with licensing revenue of $80 million. The budget's broken into two parts. House Bill 1, which is the actual line item of everything you're going to spend. Every staff who's going to be paid, the benefits they get, every pencil you're going to buy, all the gas you're going to buy. I mean, it's the same thing. Towns do this. Goffstown's got a budget.
Oh, yeah.
The school district puts it in, the town puts it in. I mean, it's the same kind of budget process, only on the state level. House Bill 2 is called the trailer bill, and it has any changes to state law that have to be made in order to accommodate what the governor has asked for in House Bill 1.
Yes.
House Bill 2 is the piece that Governor Hassan could not get out the door. So House Finance got House Bill 1 with all the finances in it, but we couldn't figure out where the revenue was coming from because that's in House Bill 2. So we
now, is that the Ways and Means side?
Well, no, the governor puts out both sides.
Oh, she does. Okay.
She does.
Yeah.
Ways and Means does look at revenue, but the governor puts out expected revenue. I mean, we have business enterprise tax, we have tobacco tax, we have the road toll or the gasoline tax. We have regular taxes that come in. You pay to get married, you pay to pull a birth certificate. I mean, all of those things are regular pieces of revenue that come into the state. So that shows up in House Bill 2.
Okay.
The casino would have shown up in House Bill 2. The bill didn't come, the bill didn't come, the bill didn't come. We were actually well into March, and as I said, that lawsuit had been filed against her. But she did get it out the door. She did not include a casino.
Oh.
She had spent the $80 million in revenue that she projected the casino would bring in. At the same time, the Senate had a casino bill, SB 152, which the House has been working on and will vote on tomorrow.
Yes, yeah.
That had the $80 million in it. So right off the bat, the budget wasn't balanced because of this $80 million, because she did spend the money. And then her revenue estimates were higher than the revenue estimates done by Ways and Means. That's where Ways and Means plays that. And actually, Norm Majors, as you mentioned, does revenue estimates for the Republicans and has for years, and has a track record of being right smack dab on the expected revenue. Yeah. He works constantly at doing that, monitoring everything. His revenue estimates were slightly lower than the whole committees, the Ways and Means Committee, and the revenue estimates that came out of there did come out on a party line vote. But they were much lower than the governor's revenue estimates.
All the governor has thinking we're going to have a lot more money.
So she thinks we're going to have a lot more money, and guess what? She spent all of that money.
And then what happens there is the next year, the money isn't there.
The money isn't there.
And then she has to come back and says, oops.
Yeah.
And that's what's happened, prior to 2010.
That's what's happened in prior years. It will
Yes.
not happen this year. So we aren't going to have any red ink at the beginning of the next fiscal year.
Yeah.
She's going to be able to go in with a budget that's in the green. She's going to be able to spend for her programs and immediately not have to think about tax cuts. But her budget increased spending by 10.2%, which when you're looking at budgets in billions of dollars, that's a significant amount of money.
That is.
Somebody did a revenue, a tax increase estimate, and they estimated that every man, every woman, and every child would pay $385 more in taxes every year under this budget should it pass.
Wow.
So now it's gone to the Senate.
And what are they going to do with it?
Well, if we don't pass the casino bill tomorrow, they're immediately $80 million short that they're going to have to cut out because House Finance left that spending in there. But we didn't add the casino to House Bill 2.
Yeah, okay.
So they're immediately short. On top of that, after the increased gasoline tax, which will go up significantly over the next 3 years, they added that to House Bill 2, and it's in there as well.
Oh, the Senate added the gas.
No,
oh,
the House
the House
added
did,
it
yes.
before we passed it. The Senate has it. They have now held that bill. So they have the right to take it out of House Bill 2 if they want, because they can amend House Bill 2 the same as the House did.
Yes, they can do whatever they want with it
That's
at
right.
this point. Yeah, and from what I understand, they're not going to vote on it until June 6th, which I guess is the last day.
Yeah, I think they're kind of hoping that something will happen with the casino because we worked diligently on that. It was a joint committee with House Finance and House Ways and Means, 45 of us. We divided it into 3 subcommittees: community, regulation, and revenue. And Neil Kirk, who is really anti-gambling, chaired the revenue subcommittee, which I sat on. And he worked and worked and worked to try to show the minimum amount of revenue the state would get. It doesn't matter what scenario he came up with experts. Steve Norton came and worked, Jim Rubens, who's very strong against gambling.
Yes, yeah.
The state would get significant revenue from having one casino.
Even years down the road.
Even years down the road, even with any decline. The state, if they don't have a casino, is projected to lose significant revenue from the lottery, which pays for our education system. So if we don't put in a casino, we don't get that revenue. We don't put in a casino, and Massachusetts does, and they have 11 bidders for 3 casinos.
Wow, really?
Then we would lose the estimates. Everybody came up with estimates that were very high, and that pays for our public education. That really concerns me.
Yeah, so we're going to have to look at that.
And on top of that, Salem had a vote in March.
Yes.
March was sunny, March was warmish. There was no reason for people to stay home at the March elections. It wasn't like there was a huge snowstorm and people didn't want to drive to vote. And nearly 82% of the people in Salem voted in favor of having a casino in Salem. And of course, they have Rockingham Park.
Well, yeah, that's it.
They've had gambling at Rockingham Park for 100 years, racehorses.
Yeah.
In its heyday, they had 4,000 people work at Rockingham Park.
Wow, really? That many?
They want a casino. They want to have that job base. They want to have that tax base. They have been very active in working with the Joint Committee saying, we had the vote, we want the casino, we want to move forward. You know, why aren't you going to pass this bill? It came out of the committee 23 votes in favor of killing the bill, 22 votes in favor of passing the bill.
Yeah, I did see the vote was just barely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just barely. And if we don't get the revenue, I can't imagine what the Senate is going to have to cut. I mean, we've done some things in the budget this year that I'm very much in favor of. We were able to give more funding to the university system, which unfortunately we had to cut last year. Nobody wanted to do that, but we needed to balance the budget. We have fully funded the disabled waiting list for people who need services.
Good, yeah.
We have been able to fully fund elderly services, but, and this is a horrible but, in order to do some of that, we have cut funding to county nursing homes.
Oh.
County nursing homes will get 7% less dollars. So not only has the state budget gone up 10.2%, your county funding has gone down 7%, which is like a double whammy for you and me. We both live in Hillsborough. We have Hillsborough Nursing Home.
Yeah.
We will pay for the increase in taxes to the state, and there are significant numbers of increase of taxes in the budget, and the county tax rate is going to have to be raised. Years ago, the state said to the counties, you guys pay for the elderly, and we'll pay for the juvenile problem.
Yep.
And the counties agreed to that. And the reality is in New Hampshire, we are graying at a fairly fast rate, and yet our young population is going down significantly.
Yeah.
I mean, school enrollments are down up to 10% across the state, so there are fewer juveniles that need care, fewer this, fewer that, and yet there are more elderly people who really need services, and now the county's going to have to pay for that. If this budget passes, there's a significant cut to everybody. Every county member, we aren't the only county with a nursing home, so every county is doing something for their elderly people, and that's not going to be covered.
Well, and we have a county nursing home here in Goffstown, Hillsborough, that really runs extremely efficient compared to some of the other counties.
Yes, you do. I'm very proud of the nursing home we have in this county.
I am too. I think we do a great job here. But so how are the other counties? How are they going to survive when they're already running not very well?
Well, I don't know how we're going to survive if we have to ask county taxpayers to pay 7% more on their county tax bill.
Yeah.
That's a significant cost increase per thousand for every property owner in our county.
Now, where's the Senate on that part? Are they trying to get rid of that, or can they?
They've been having significant budget hearings and looking at what's being spent and what's not being spent.
Yeah.
While they waited to see what would happen with the casino bill, because if we would pass the casino bill, that's $80 million of revenue that the governor spent that isn't in the budget. So that would ease their situation. If we don't pass the casino bill, they've got to right off the bat cut $80 million, and that doesn't do anything about making the counties whole. You've still got the 7% cut
Yeah.
to the counties.
Yeah. And I know they want a new women's prison.
Yes.
You know, will that be part of this budget?
I don't know.
Yeah.
That goes through capital.
Oh,
So,
that does.
You know,
Okay.
that's a capital. There are two bills. House Bill 25 does all the capital projects.
Yeah.
They had something in the capital bill that passed the House to go to the Senate. And quite frankly, I haven't been watching it much because Senate finance hearings are as long as House finance hearings. And I'd love to clone myself and be in 2 or 3 rooms at one time. Not possible.
Yeah, no, finance is it's a long hours.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how you guys do it. Hopefully they bring in pizza or something for you. Or
Occasionally.
do they? Good. I should go sit in on a few just to.
Occasionally we just pitch in to get food ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, what are the differences between, you know, what Governor Hassan is bringing to what the House and the Senate wants? I mean, I know it's an increase, but I mean, is there any specific line item where the huge increases from the governor's budget?
There are some pretty significant increases. There are a lot of new staff members. So this goes up 5%. Department of Revenue Administration, which I'm going to call DRA,
Yeah.
because it's an acronym. So DRA is Department of Revenue Administration. They collect the taxes, has 35 new full-time staff members in this budget over the budget 2 years ago.
And do they need them?
Well, every department thinks they need everything they can get. So,
Wow, that's a lot of people.
you know, when your wife says to you, do we need to spend this for our business? Do you say, no, we don't, I just wanted to spend it for fun? You say, no, we need to spend it because.
Yes.
So there's a reason. Department of Environmental Services has 8 new staff members, but these are people who have been funded by federal funds that have dried up. We have a huge amount of dams in New Hampshire. Lake Winnipesaukee is held together by a dam. It brings in a lot of tourist business.
Yes.
And so these people have always done what's known as dam maintenance, and no, I'm not swearing, it's just an actual dam that holds it up. And there are dams all over the state that need to be maintained and cared for. Always we've had federal money to do that. Under the Obama administration, that money has dried up. So it was either let the dams go, and eventually there'll be no Lake Winnipesaukee, there'll be no water in Pawtuckaway State Park. I mean, those were the kinds of things we were facing when Commissioner Burek from DES came and talked to us. So we did add those to their budget.
Yeah.
In addition, in 2008, Governor Lynch, by executive order, stopped all payments that the state makes to wastewater treatment systems. And that, fully funded, is nearly $5 million a year. Since 2008, Governor Lynch has never budgeted for that.
Oh, I wonder why.
Maggie put $3 million into 2015, $0 into 2014. Well, the reason he stopped it was because he didn't have money.
Yeah.
There was no way he could find revenue to do it, even with what they were spending.
Oh, and that was an easy one
He
to
had to
pick.
make choices, and that was the choice he made.
Yeah, okay.
House Finance fully funded that at slightly less than $5 million for 2015, with nothing for 2014.
Yeah. And now, how about the highways? And I mean, are they just basing that on the gas tax that they want? You know, what are they doing with the highways?
The highway fund is a sad fund. The idea with the highways is that if it's a user fee.
Yes.
You drive, you buy gas,
Yep.
There's a gas tax, that's your user fee for driving.
Yep.
So if I drive 10 miles a week and you drive 100 miles a week, you pay gas tax on however many gallons you need for 100 miles a week, and I pay for what I need for 10 miles a week.
Yep, sounds logical.
But now we have hybrids and all electric cars, and those people pay zero when they're not using gas.
Yeah, we need to address that.
On top of that, over the years, money has gotten siphoned out of the highway fund. So instead of going entirely into bridges and roads, 1% goes to the Judicial Council, and the rationale for that is, and I'm not making this up, my friend Steve Allencourt, who's a Manchester rep, says you can't make this stuff up.
Yes.
Crimes are committed by people driving cars, therefore part of the highway fund should be used to fund the judicial branch. The safety department has funded their state troopers with highway funds, and the rationale for that has been that safe roads are partly roads that are monitored by state police officers. I find a little more credence to that one than the fact that, well, everybody who commits a crime is driving a car, so we should get money. So of those two, but you're supposed to have, the safety department is supposed to get 26% of the highway funds starting July 1st, which is down 2% from what it has been. However, this budget, they have 37.5%. So they are spending way over their share. And that's money that does not go to fix a red bridge, does not go to fix a road, does not go into highway block grant money that every town gets to fix their own town roads in ways they want.
Yeah.
So there's an issue. As a result, Dave Campbell, who chairs transportation, put through the gas tax increase.
Yes.
Which is over 3 years, but fairly significant. Now, in Dave Campbell's defense, and I voted against the bill because I thought it was too much too fast. Yeah. But in Dave Campbell's defense, the highway tax has not been raised since the 80s.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And if it had been indexed to inflation, it would be up 30 cents per gallon, which is more than what the gasoline tax bill was over the 3 years. But at the same time, I've been wanting to drive a Chevy Volt, which is an all-electric car. And I have tried 3 different times, and Chevy dealers tell me they cannot keep them on the lot. So I have not yet been able to buy one, and I know electric cars are selling more and more. I mean, BMW is going to come out next year, they think, with 2 models. One that's all electric like the Volt, and one that's going to be electric, but then if you run out of your juice in your batteries, you'll have a small gas engine.
Yeah.
So it's clearly where we're going. And a man named Fisker, who used to work for BMW for years, ran their divisions, now sells cars called Fisker, if you want to Google it, it's F-I-S-K-A-R, Karmas, that are all electric with solar panels painted on the roof. So when you park at the grocery store, your car starts recharging its batteries without having to plug it in. And he wants to bring out, and it's a high end, it's about $100,000. But he wants to bring out in 2014, and I don't know whether he will or not, a car that would rival a BMW. And you drive down the road, you see all the BMW symbols, you know he might reach quite a number of people, and those are people not paying the road tax. Now, I still drive a gasoline car, but I wanted to drive the Volt because I'm thinking about how can I cut my expenses, and I bet everybody else is too.
But so eventually we're going to have to address that.
Yes.
You know, because as gas sales keep going down, and they're going to over the next 20 years, eventually they'll make an electric car that will compete with your Chevy Luminors and your small cars. Yep.
The Tesla's out. Ford has just come out with something that's primarily electric. One of my friends bought it. He told me his wife has not purchased any gasoline in 5 weeks.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
Can you imagine? Because I'm putting
I can't imagine.
my truck. I'm getting 18 miles to the gallon if I'm lucky.
Right.
Yeah. No, it kills me. I got a 36-gallon tank, so when it's down, it kills me to fill it. And they say trucks are going to be eventually, electric.
Fisker says that in maybe a decade and a half, nobody will say, oh, it's a hybrid car. All cars will be some sort of hybrid.
Yes. Yeah.
So I think if we're going that way, that maybe the federal government will come up with a way, because they also collect money that they give, keep up the interstate and do whatever, that they may come up with a plan. But if not, New Hampshire and other states are going to have to do that. I mean, the sunnier it is, if you start painting solar panels on the top of your car, the more you're going to get the sunshine recharging your battery, and that's not science fiction now. You can buy a Fisker Karma down in Boston. So they're for sale. People buy them.
Yeah. I'll have to Google that. To check it out. Now with the governor's budget, it is 10.2% higher.
Yes.
Than our current budget.
Yeah,
and so with.
We think that her revenues are inflated by $31 million.
Wow, that much.
Based on what Norm Majors does. Now, keep in mind, Norm Majors is right on this year. He was right on last year.
Yes.
Last biennium, he was right on. The biennium before, he was right on when the revenues came into the budget is too high. According to his estimates, he thinks she's up 31 million. So you add 31 million to 80 million. You're now at $111 million. Senator Morse thinks they have overstated revenue from 2 of their taxes, and he thinks that what he needs to cut is more like 150 to 180 million, and that's assuming he gets the casino. That's a lot of cuts that are going to hurt a lot of people.
That is. Yeah, that's going to be huge.
And there's no hope then of giving money back to the counties for that 7% if that happens.
Yes, yeah.
Because remember, that's in the budget. So there's not going to be any money to put back into the counties.
Yeah. So, I mean, and that's what so we have to look at how do we get that money back in the counties? And is there a way to do that?
Well, the obvious way is to level fund it as we've been doing for the last few years and give the counties the same amount of money for their nursing homes as we've given before. Yeah. But it's cut this year in the in-House bill too.
Yeah. And now if we didn't hire those employees, I mean, could we live, especially in the, the IRS side of it, the revenue?
The revenue side of it, of those employees, 6 or 8 of them, I didn't bring that with me, so either 6 or 8, John, were auditors. Auditors actually audit businesses and bring in revenue.
Yes.
So DRA, based on getting those auditors, said they would get 26 million more in revenue. But on top of that, even if you said there were 8 of them, they got 35 new full-time employees. So subtract 8 from 35, those other people have nothing to do with the auditing.
Well, and the governor wants, what, 14, is it? Or 16 more policemen, state
troopers? Yes, and that's in the budget.
That is in the budget.
That is in the budget.
Yeah.
And that's why the highway money is being spent. So if I lived in a community with a red listed bridge, I would have to say to myself, do I need more state troopers or do I really need this bridge fixed?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, we need our bridges fixed.
That was my thought.
Yeah. Yeah, so it would be, curious what the Senate's going to do with it, with the gas tax. But I think it's all going to come back to what we do tomorrow, which, this will be aired shortly after that.
Right. We need $80 million in revenue. I voted against killing the casino bill in the committee. It is one casino, and it is one casino at a location not yet designated. But when you've got one town with a facility, with a vote that says we want it, we've had gambling here for 100 years, we want the jobs, we have the road infrastructure to support this, it's kind of hard to say no. Russ, my husband Russ, you know him,
yes.
He sits on Ways and Means, he's a state rep too, flew for the Air Force, and we were stationed at Nellis Air Force Base, which was in North Las Vegas. So we lived in Las Vegas. And I have lived with casinos around with no crime in the neighborhood, no extra this, no extra that. So my experience living in Las Vegas leads me to think that some of the things people are talking about is not going to be creditable. I mean, we had Representative Lovejoy, who chaired the community, gave me a big chuckle because she was talking about you pick up bad habits if you live close to something. So under that premise, she talked for about 10 minutes on the fact that if you live within 10 miles of a casino, you're 9% more likely to become a problem gambler. And I said to Kevin Landrigan, who writes for the Telegraph,
Yes.
I said, I finally understand why I'm fat. I live within 10 miles of a grocery store. I become a problem eater.
Yeah.
But Kevin, I live within 10 miles of a bar and 10 miles of a liquor store. I guess you only pick up one bad habit, so I have mine.
Yeah, yeah. Did she hear any? Did she see any humor? Or?
No, she didn't see any humor in
Yeah,
that.
yeah. I was going to say, I think that's good. Yeah, no, it is, and you know, with the governor's budget and being so kind of inflated, you know, with the revenue coming in, you know, that is going to be a big problem for us.
It's a problem.
Yeah.
And I don't know what's going to happen. I mean, obviously the House now is going to watch and have to react, but if the House doesn't take action to raise that $80 million worth of revenue that the governor spent
Yeah.
in her budget by passing the casino bill, then we are, without a doubt, going to be watching some fairly huge budget cuts.
Yes. Yeah.
And you can't, I say to people all the time, every budget line item has got a constituency. And the message from that constituency is this: don't cut my budget item, cut John Burt's.
Yes.
Cut Lynne Ober's. Don't cut mine.
That's what they'll say.
And that is how it will be. I mean, the governor put in, I worked last session on starting school construction aid again. We've had no school construction aid because Governor Lynch stopped it. The program,
Yes,
as it was a golden goose. It needed to be reined in. We could no longer afford it. Everybody was aware of that. We worked diligently with the department, with superintendents, with principals, to come up with a model that would work and could be used and have been tested in court. And we're not the only state that's had this problem. So other states are a little farther down the road than we are, and some of those have been tested in court, so we know what stands up in court. We came up with a new criteria to start school construction aid, but still pay off. We still owe $540 million on projects that were approved before John Lynch stopped. So we're paying nearly $50 million a year on those projects.
Wow, that much.
We would have started school construction in 2015. We wanted to start it in 2014, but DOE couldn't turn their rules around fast enough. And given what the towns have to vote in March, and you had to know in September if you were going to get money or not, so you could put a warrant on, it just wasn't going to happen. And I will say this for the governor, she put the money into the 2015 budget.
Yeah.
House Finance took it out.
Huh, they did.
That's jobs. Construction is jobs.
Yeah.
It's also helping schools that need some help. It's helping taxpayers in districts where they need some school construction, and they took it out. Part of the people say, well, why would we do that? We don't pay to build a police station. But we pay to train every police officer for every town. The state pays all of that training money, 100% of it. We pay to train firefighters, 100% of it. There's a fire academy, there's a police standards academy. They have huge budgets. And so while we don't pay to build a police station, we pay to train and certify your staff. So in the school side, we don't pay anything towards educating a teacher, but we had been giving a percentage towards school construction.
Yes.
So, you know, nothing is quite apples to apples, but that's been completely taken out. The Education Choice Scholarship was unfunded. Charter school money was taken out of the budget.
Yeah.
No new charter schools at all will start up.
Now, was that party line?
Yes, the budget was voted in House Finance party line with one exception. In order to sit on committee of conference, you have to have voted in favor of the main motion. So if the main motion is to pass, somebody has to vote in favor. And House Finance Republicans got together and decided that Neil Kirk would vote for the budget. All the rest of us would vote against it in the committee. And that way he would be eligible to sit on the committee of conference, so we would have a voice at the table.
Okay.
And then in the House, 100% of the Republicans voted against the budget because of some of the cuts that were in there and because of the increased spending.
Yes, and Lynn, from what I understood, that was one of the first times that has happened in many, many, many years.
Yes,
where it was 100%,
absolutely,
straight line.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In any budget, there's always something that you can hate. You've got that at home.
Oh, yes.
You and your wife have got that.
Yeah.
I would love to have a Ferrari. My husband keeps telling me we can't afford it. So there's something for me to hate in my house. Yeah, all right. That's an extreme, humorous example, but there's always something in a budget that you can hate. I really hate having to pay this amount of money for and name your pet project.
But now, why would the House Democrat-controlled finance take items that a Democrat governor put in there?
Because they knew there wasn't enough money to cover everything.
Okay, so they're living within reality some.
Some, and they didn't make as many cuts as we thought. It was kind of interesting. I sit on Division 1. House Finance is divided into 3 permanent subcommittees called divisions. Division 3 does Health and Human Services, which happens to be 50% of the budget.
Yeah.
So that's all they do. Division 2 does education, including the universities and community college, fish and game, the lottery, and safety. Division 1, where I sit, sees 47 other budgets from little budgets to big budgets, because
Really?
there are tiny budgets in state government and there are huge budgets in state government. We started out in Division 1 with our chairman saying we're going to have to make $20 million worth of cuts. When House Bill 2 came out without the $80 million in gambling, our chairman started saying House Finance needs to make $120 million worth of cuts in this budget.
That's a lot of money.
And then things got very quiet and money got started adding money back, but still some things went. And they passed it on to the Senate not balanced. And they did some things. I mean, we were expecting to get about $22 million in tobacco settlement in 2014.
Yes.
Unfortunately, we got that money earlier this spring, and the governor's already spending it. So now this is revenue, they counted on one-time revenue that they were going to use to balance the budget instead of doing what they were supposed to do with it. It came in this fiscal year, and the governor said, oh good, I've got some things I need to spend it on. So there's revenue they won't get next year because it came in early and it's being spent.
So what is she buying?
You know,
I mean, there must be a trail.
She did not want to make any budget cuts, and they were running over in some areas.
Oh.
Winter was a little worse than we thought, so we spent a little more on salt. We had more of this, more of that. I mean, there were always emergencies. We had 2 lawsuits. Health and Human Services was sued twice, $17.5 million because of billing that was done inappropriately back in the early 2000s. 2001, 2002, federal government said, okay, you owe us money, we're just not sending you the money because they send you so much money for Health and Human Services.
Yeah.
We're not sending you the money, so just deal without it. You're not paying us back. And then this year, we also had every school district was told to bill transportation costs for special education students in a certain manner. They were doing that. The federal government came in and audited and said, that is not what we told you to do. You have to pay $2.5 million this year.
Oh, okay.
So those 2 lawsuits equate to $20 million.
Wow. But some of that was under Governor Lynch was dealing with that, right?
Yeah, he paid $17.5 million himself.
Okay.
On a very similar thing. The $17.5 million, $17.5 million, yeah.
So that's where that came from.
Yeah.
And so that's where the money, that one-time money that's here, but now we don't have it.
No, we don't have it. But we spent it in 2014.
Yeah. And I know the federal government talked about another stimulus, but I don't think that's going to happen now.
I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and I don't think we need it.
I mean, let's face it, look at the horrible tragedy in Oklahoma.
Yes, yeah.
Those people need a lot of aid.
Yeah.
They need that more than the country needs stimulus. I mean, we've got people, you looked at the TV pictures and it was horrifying. There wasn't a tree with a leaf on it.
Yeah.
Those houses were in little tiny pieces.
Yeah.
You know, those people have no transportation, their cars are gone. They have no homes, they have no clothes, they have no furniture, they have everything was just in little tiny pieces.
Yeah, I just can't imagine. Well, but they say what was the hurricane that came up through New Jersey, New York?
Sandy.
Yeah, Sandy. They say they're still devastated.
Yes.
The federal government promised them a lot, and I guess they haven't delivered 100% yet.
I think as a people, we're a little impatient.
Yeah.
We are. I want it now. I don't want it on Saturday. I want it now.
Yes, yeah.
We forget that if you're building a new home, you have your piece of property, you get your plan, you sign your contractor starts building. It's 6 months before you move into a new house.
Yeah.
And so you have a disaster like Sandy or like the tornado that we were watching on TV yesterday, and it is months before they can put a house up. I mean, it's not something you pop up overnight,
Yeah.
and yet you think everything will be back together. Oh, you're promising me aid, I'll get it right away.
Yeah.
Right away means a lot of work for a lot of people to make that happen.
Yeah. Yeah, and I can't even imagine how do you clean up that mess out in Oklahoma.
I don't know.
The pictures I saw.
Well, Katrina, we haven't been able to completely rebuild New Orleans. How many years has that been?
Yeah. Well, there's questions, should we?
Yeah, because some of it's underwater anyway,
Yeah.
or it would be without levees, yeah.
Well, but you've been in New Hampshire quite a few years.
Yep, long time.
From what I understand, we're building houses where we shouldn't be building them today. And when New England gets their next big perfect storm that comes up through here, we're going to have a lot of homes in the river.
We've already seen some of that. This is my 5th term in the House. My 2nd term, Mike Wally moved me to House Finance, asked me to join House Finance because they needed another Republican on it, and I'd been sitting on Science and Technology. So I agreed to move. We had a bill, we'd had some of those floods in New Hampshire, and we had a bill, and a woman lived in a floodplain. She had a permit, and it was a designated floodplain, and they built a house, 3 stories, and she kept her mother's priceless antiques in the basement.
Ugh.
When they got flooded, the basement and the 1st story were flooded. Things on the 2nd and the 3rd floor were dry, but the antiques were all gone. And she came to the house, she got her state rep to file a bill, came to the house and asked the state to reimburse her because her house insurance was not going to reimburse having antiques when you live in a floodplain.
Really? Well, I hope they killed that bill.
I can't remember what happened to it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, because, that's personal responsibility there. You shouldn't have put them down there.
Yeah, it seems like the House passed it, but the Senate might not have. I do not remember what happened to that.
Oh, that'd be interesting to look up. But it is, we're building where we shouldn't be building. And then people look at the government and the state to help them out.
Yeah.
Because, we, like you said, we have had a couple floods, especially over in the Keene area.
We have.
And the state goes over and does what they can.
We've had people lose houses. We've had we've had rivers after the flood to have completely taken the property away. I mean, there's not even land to build on anymore. But in this case, they were all in a floodplain. There were, I think, 17 houses affected, and all 17 of them needed relief because none of them had flood insurance to start with.
Yes, yeah.
So now they've had a flood. They have no flood insurance. They didn't buy it. So they're going to get nothing to help them back. A couple of houses had to be completely torn down and rebuilt. You couldn't save them. They weren't 3 stories tall. They were just filled with mud and mold by the time they got everything out.
Yeah.
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 It was horrible.
But then it's like the hurricane, my biggest thing is where do you even, I guess you pick up the first board and that's how you clean it. One board at a time.
Yeah, well, I think, they're going through that down where Sandy went through.
Yeah.
Look how many days it took to get the electricity back up. And they had the hurricane, and within 2 weeks they had a horrible snow
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, they got double whammy
Yeah,
down
they
there.
did.
Yeah. Yeah. And I remember Vermont got devastated by
Yep.
it. They said over $1 billion worth of damages.
Yep.
Luckily, I mean, knock on wood, I'm sorry to Vermont, but, luckily it really missed the majority of New Hampshire.
It did. I mean, the ice storm we had a few years ago,
Yeah.
we were 7 days without electricity. We went 4 days without a generator, and then decided that smart money would be take care of yourself, bought a
Yes.
generator. My husband said to me, "Oh, we'll never use it again. This is a one-time thing." Well, we've used it a number of times since then. We've
Yeah.
had another outage of 7 days after that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I have a small generator. It'll run lights in the refrigerator.
Yeah.
It won't run 210 or 220, but it's just a small generator, and we've used it many times.
It's nice to have running water, and you don't have it without electricity. I grew up in Kansas City, Missouri.
Oh,
The
you did?
lights,
Yeah.
I did. The lights went out, and the water still ran, so the toilet still worked. So the first time we lost electricity after I moved here, it was like, "What do you mean the toilets and the water don't work?"
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
it's a pump.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Now it is. Yeah, yeah. I'm on city water. Just got switched over. Well, it was probably 3 years now. So they say the water will still run when my lights go
Yes,
out.
it will. That's
Yeah.
a lovely thing. We don't have
Yeah,
that.
Yeah, yeah. And so I know we're going to go back on June 26th, is from what they're telling me.
Yes.
And that'll be to finalize.
We're hoping that the budget will be finalized by then, but I don't know what the Senate is going to do. I'm sure that they're waiting for our vote tomorrow.
Yes.
And then if they don't get that revenue, they're going to have to start making enough cuts that I think it would be pretty hard to get a committee of conference to agree.
Yeah. Well, and what they're saying too is that the gas tax, they're saying it's not going to happen from what, early estimates. But if the gambling doesn't pass tomorrow, will they look at the gas tax?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I think if the gambling doesn't pass, they will not look at the gas tax. The gas tax doesn't buy them anything in the budget because it goes to the highway fund. And they, one of the things they could do to improve the highway fund are to cut those 12 to 14 new state troopers out of the governor's budget,
Yeah.
keep the same number of state troopers as we have now, and the highway fund would get a significant amount of money because that would be another 9.5% that they should get that they won't get under the governor's proposal. So that will just, I think, make
Yeah.
gas tax dead in the water.
Well, one bill that came through that I'm a little nervous about is it allows the governor to raid 300, is it? Or 500?
Dedicated funds?
Yes. Does that make you nervous?
That's actually now in House Bill 2.
Oh, so it's in there.
It's in there. The governor asked for the right to raid dedicated funds for the next biennium. This caused a lot of problem in House Finance. So we amended that section
Yeah.
to give her the right to raid for only this fiscal year. But the budget is going to be in the green this fiscal year, so she has no need to take funds to balance the budget for this fiscal year.
Oh, and that
she
passed in the House.
And that passed in House Bill 2.
Okay.
And she has no right now to take it out of 2014 and 2015. She would have to try to get another bill through both branches. But the Police Standards and Training Council
Yeah.
was so upset that the governor asked for that they came to House Finance and they asked for a section that said the governor may never raid their dedicated fund again. And that got put into House Bill 2 as well.
Well, why didn't the other commissioners line up?
I don't know.
Because I would.
I think I would have too.
Yeah. Yeah, because, you can't really say, okay, you can't raid this one, but you can raid that.
That's
Yeah.
what happened.
Wow. And that went through.
That went to Division 2.
Yeah.
Dan Eaton is a Democrat from Keene and a former police chief. So he was very sympathetic to the police training and standards
Yes.
and the fact that they train all of the police officers in the state.
Yeah.
So he was very sympathetic to that, and he got it through Division 2, and he fought for it in a whole finance committee. And it was not a unanimous vote. In fact, 3 Democrats walked on it rather than vote against the chair. So it was a close vote because we only had 22 people at the table. We had 12 Democrats then, and we had 10 Republicans, and it was a close vote.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it barely got through then.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we're at the end of the show, and I just want to thank you, Lynn, for coming on and, talking to, Goffstown and whoever else watches this.
My pleasure.
On the budget, because it is very important. And like I said, it was a treat having you on.
Thank you.
I respect every time you guys get up there, because it's pretty impressive the amount of work that you have to go through.
It is an interesting exercise, but I do enjoy it. So
yeah. So you like staying on finance?
I like staying on finance.
Yeah. See, I don't know how many terms it takes you to get there, but I thought about it, but it's like, wow, there's a lot of work.
Yeah, the hard nights are when you're there still till midnight, and then you have to drive home.
Really? Yeah, that is hard.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, again, thank you, and I really appreciate it. And I really appreciate you watching. And I had Representative Lynne Ober, and she's a representative down Hudson and Pelham. And I want to thank you for watching. And until next time, have a good day.